Okay, hello everyone. So my practice encompasses intellectual property. And intellectual property, if you hear that term, generally refers to these four things: patents, trademarks, copyrights, and trade secrets. My goal today is to give you a basic foundation in each of these four areas. Now, let's start with trademarks. A trademark is something that identifies source. So when you're driving down the road, before my kids could read, they could spot the golden arches and know that was McDonald's, right? That's because they're trademarked. Now, when you walked in and looked up at me, you probably saw these pens in my pocket, and you probably thought how dapper and cool those looked. And in fact, these pens, even when they're in my pocket, you can see their trademark. These are Mont Blanc pens, and their trademark is the little white capped peak. It's like a snow-covered mountain. And this is the silver solitaire. My friend on the back row has priced one for us. How much is a silver solitaire going for on eBay? $590. This is the entry level roller ball. It's $150 probably. Now you might wonder that really what you're getting is this $5.95 refill for $125. The rest of this is just plastic. And what gives this the value is the trademark on the cap. And so you'll see, successful young lawyers walking around with these pens in their pocket, advertising their success. Now, just so you don't think I'm totally crazy, I actually bought these in Mexico for like $15 each, and they are not real Mont Blancs. So trademarks can be a variety of things. They can be words like McDonald's. They can be logos like the golden arches. It can be even a sound, a smell, or a color. You probably heard of the pink insulation. That's actually a trademark. Here are a number of trademarks you're probably all familiar with. So now we're going to do a pop. Oh, first of all, jeans. Basic jeans, Costco, $12.99. Right? If you want jeans from the brand For All Mankind, you're going to pay $225. How about Dolce & Gabbana? $1,175 for jeans. And the difference is, other than some style, it's that they're Dolce & Gabbana, right? How about Gucci's entry into the jean market? You probably can't see that. It says $1,320 at the bottom. And I wonder what your reaction would be to me if I had showed up dressed like that instead of with my blazer and my Mont Blanc pens. Now, just to kind of cap this off, these are jeans, but they're like very fancy, obviously. And those are only, can you read that? $24.90. Okay, Gucci jeans. Okay, who makes these? How about this? I give this lecture to law students a lot. So it's kind of, you'll see it's geared for law students, the BMW. And kind of since the recession hit, I've had to adjust it. Who is this? Okay. How about? Oh, this is not that hard. The Canyons. Okay. Very good. Armada. This is a shot of me last year. How about these horses? Those look familiar? And Porsche. Remember my son was he said, "Dad, why do all the cool cars have horses on them?" A lot of horsepower, son. Okay, guys, you know this? If you don't, you should. What is it, ladies? Tiffany. Nothing will light up a woman's eyes on Christmas morning more than that right there, okay? Just remember. Now, ladies, any idea what this is? This is the brand Ducati, which would be an appropriate reciprocal present for the Tiffany's stack. Okay, how about this one? Very good. Stanley, thank you. Crown Royal. Okay, double points for that. Close. Swatch. A clue. This starts tomorrow. Boom, Pyeongchang. I thought that was a really weird logo. I was like looking up their logo because I had the logo from the last Olympics and I updated this and I thought, I don't think that logo is working for me. Okay, this is the Mont Blanc logo. Okay. And at the other end of the spectrum, we have Bic. You guys did better on that one. And another shot of me from last year when we actually had snow in the mountains. Chanel, very good. Speaking of the Gucci jeans. Target, my favorite store. This is not Eddie Bauer. Correct. The most, probably, is it still the fastest? No. I think Elon is saying his new Tesla is going to be faster. But probably the most expensive. You know, I give this at BYU a lot, and they never get this one. Weirdly. Mick. Ooh, trick question. Okay, let's see if this works. You ever heard that? Back in the day, you actually had to dial for an ATT operator, and you'd get that. Hello. Where'd my cursor go?
Where's the beef?
Where's the beef? That was Clara Peller.
Oh, and I can't get up.
Have a nice wine, lunch. A pizza. It's a pizza.
Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. This is oh, what a relief it is.
Droid. Okay, here's a good one. What was that? Anybody know that one? So I actually pulled up the application for Netflix's trademark on that sound, and I thought it was interesting how they described it. The mark consists of a sound mark comprising 2 16th note timpani strikes on D2. Those must be like certain size drums, simultaneously with which are played 3 dotted half notes on D2, D4, and D5. But they don't tell you the tempo. How do you know? I don't know. Okay, so smell can be a trademark. Here's from a case where they granted registration, and I thought it was interesting how they described it again, almost like describing a fine wine, a high-impact, fresh floral fragrance reminiscent of plumeria blossoms. And they use this on sewing and embroidery thread. So I guess you'd open the package and you'd smell their trademark. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so trademarks tell you something about source or origin. If you get a Marriott hotel, you're going to get like the same mattress every time. They indicate something about quality, and they're an advertising device. Okay, so now I'm going to teach you how to pick a good trademark. This is a fine art. And this is the continuum. So imagine that line there. That's like, you know, negative infinity up to positive infinity. And on the left, we have the really bad trademarks, generic. Those are not going to work. On the right, the best, arbitrary. So I'm going to take you through these and teach you about the best trademarks. So best trademarks are arbitrary and fanciful. Xerox. I mean, Xerox isn't even a word, right? Exxon. X doesn't appear next to itself in English except in their trademark. The internet has brought us great trademarks. Fandango. Okay, imagine inventing a computer and let's call it a lemon. No, let's call it an apple. An Apple computer. How about Ford, Google? You know, those are all great trademarks because they're so arbitrary, they're so distinctive, they don't mean anything else. So on the arbitrary side, these are the best. Arbitrary and distinctive trademarks. As we slide to the left, they get not as strong. Suggestive are still very good. So if you come up with a suggestive mark, I'll give you some examples. One of my law partners used to use what he called the AHA test, and I'm going to try it out on you with a couple of these. So I had a client that made devices for testing pulse oximeters. So a pulse oximeter, as you all know, is a device you put on your finger and it shines light through your finger, and then it detects that light after it's gone through your finger, and it detects a waveform because some of the red light has been absorbed by your blood, so it can detect your pulse and your blood oxygen content. And so to test pulse oximeters, you need a device that will simulate the light absorption characteristics of the human finger. So my client had developed this. And it, not surprisingly, kind of looked like a finger, it's cylindrical, and he painted it gold and called it the gold finger. So AHA, it kind of makes sense, right? That's the AHA part. Okay, so bikini. I was up in Jackson, Wyoming once, and we were at this bike shop looking through stuff, and they had a bin of these Lycra little shorts you could put on your bike seat, and they called it the bikini. Aha, all right. Okay, the shoot case. Had a client, Lifetime Products up in Clearfield, started with a little teeny store in Riverdale Road and grew it into a multi-hundred-million-dollar company. They came up with a little product for kids, an indoor basketball system. Now the cool thing about this is, see the base is kind of configured with some different stuff. You can actually take this thing apart. There's space in the base for the pole segments, for the rim, and then the backboard sits on the back of the base and clips in, and there's a handle on it. You can pick it up and carry it around like a suitcase, and they call it the shoot case. Very cool product. If you got little kids, you got to get one of these. Suggestive marks. So these are marks that don't really describe the product, but maybe they are suggestive of some characteristic to the product. So the sport utility market is a great example of the use of suggestive marks. Durango, I mean, I guess that's a state in Mexico or a city in Colorado or a big booty. The Denali. Denali is like a very high mountain. The Pathfinder, the Sequoia, a big sturdy tree. The Cayenne, it's hot, it's sassy. You got to have it, right? Great trademarks for sport utility vehicles. Okay, so suggestive, still very good trademarks. So now we're going to get into the ones that are not so good, and you'll find that these are the ones that people tend to want to adopt. There was a company once called International Business Machines. Now, worst trademark ever. It's like, what do you sell? Well, we sell business machines on an international level. Let's call our company the International Business Machines Co. Limited. So their lawyers finally got a hold of it and says, well, let's just call it IBM. And you can't really find a trace of their original name anywhere in their literature. So descriptive is not good. I had a woman call me once and she said, you know, I want to file a lawsuit right now. Someone has ripped off my name. I said, well, what's your name? She said, well, I'm a bookkeeper. And I said, well, what's the name of your company? She said, Quality Bookkeeping. I'm like, oh, really? This is not going to go well for you. Okay, now finally, generic. You can't register as a trademark the name of the thing, obviously, because people need to be able to use those names to describe it. So if you're selling apples, you can't register Apple as your trademark. Ski wax, fan belt. There are a number of marks that have become generic over the years. Computer mouse, escalator used to be a trademark. Aspirin still is a trademark by the Bayer Company in Germany, not in the US. Cellophane was a trademark. Zipper. What about Xerox? Do they still do that, or have you guys gotten more educated? Can someone Xerox that for me? Hand me a Xerox. So Xerox actually did a lot of advertising to keep their name from becoming generic, from committing genericide. And so they're trying to teach people not to use their trademark in a generic fashion. Okay, so that's the trademark continuum. Good on the right, bad on the left. The other thing about trademarks is rights only attached to the particular goods or services on which you use it. And here's the example. So Explorer as a trademark, if you close your eyes and you think, what is an Explorer? You know, you might think, well, that's a vehicle made by Ford. That's a sport utility vehicle. Or you might think that's an internet browser that used to be made by Microsoft. They have a new one today that I never used, but I can't remember what it's called. Edge, thank you. It's also, there's a company that uses it for speaker docks, fuel stabilized TV education series. There's a whole bunch of different companies that have registered Explorer as their trademark for different goods and services. And as long as the consumer is not likely to confuse those, you're okay. You're not going to go down to the Ford dealership and buy a sport utility vehicle by mistake, thinking that you're actually getting speaker docks, right? Okay, trade dress. Now, trade dress is kind of like trademarks. It's all about how the product is shaped or configured. Here's a couple of popular examples. Campbell's soup, you know, that packaging is kind of their trademark, and we call it trade dress. The shape of the Perrier bottle it acts as a trademark. It identifies the source of the product and tells you that, oh yeah, this is Perrier, this is the company I'm used to buying their product. Now, trademark dilution. So what happens when, remember I said they only work on the particular goods or services, so I sell Mercedes cars, and I say, hey, I want to sell Mercedes corn dogs. Not a problem, because no one's going to buy my corn dog thinking they're really getting a car. So the law says, well, we're going to define dilution for really famous marks. We're not going to let you use really famous marks on even non-similar goods or services. So you can't do Mercedes corn dogs. So a few years ago, the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus got uptight because we here in the great state of Utah were using the slogan, greatest snow on earth. And they thought we were diluting their rights in their trademark, the greatest show on earth. So they filed a lawsuit. Now, they didn't file that lawsuit in Utah, obviously. They filed it in East Virginia. And in the Eastern District of Virginia, it got signed to Judge Ellis. Well, Judge Ellis, as it turns out, liked to come to Utah to go skiing, and counted among his close friends a guy named Stein Erikson. You heard of him? He started a little ski resort called Deer Valley. Anyway, that's beside the point. I'm sure he made a very fair call in this case. The circus actually did a survey in an attempt to prove that the value of their trademark was being diminished by our use, and it backfired. Turns out the circus's trademark was more well known in Utah than in any other state. So Judge Ellis dismissed the case, and we all got along. So a few years ago, an enterprising company started selling T-shirts that were illustrated there on the right. It said, "My boyfriend's a Hell's Angel." And they sold pretty well. And the Hell's Angel Motorcycle Group, which is an actual organization, did not take kindly to that. Now, the actual Hell's Angels are quite famous for their particular brand of alternative dispute resolution, which they decided not to exercise on this occasion. Instead, they sought the help from the court and were able to get an injunction stopping sale of these T-shirts. Okay, patents. I was going to say this at the beginning, but I'm a quote, registered patent attorney. And to actually practice before the patent office, you have to take their own little bar exam. And to qualify for that, you have to have a hard science degree. So I think Whitney mentioned I have a mechanical engineering degree and then went to law school. So as a consequence of that, all the patent attorneys tend to be a little on the geeky side because we're all like techie nerds. And I actually didn't realize this growing up. One day, after I got married, my wife informed me that I was a little geeky, and I said, "Really?" And she said, "Well, for crying out loud, you played the trombone in the band in high school." And I said, "Oh, yeah, okay." And one day I was sitting around at the law firm, and one day I realized, you know what? All patent attorneys are geeks. And I realized this when we were having lunch with my partners, and it came out that we all played brass instruments in the band in high school. So anyway, to be a registered patent attorney, you have to be a geek, and you have to take the patent office's bar exam. So, patents. This is an invention created by a guy in Farmington. Anybody have an idea what this is? This is not a camera holder, but that's a good guess. Okay, the way this works is this fits over your head and shoulder, preferably not with a jacket on. And when you're out bow hunting, and you can all relate to this, sometimes carrying that heavy bow around gets a little heavy. So what you do is you put the bow through here, hook that on there, and now you can carry the bow right there. And then when you see that big buck, what do? You reach up, boom. You didn't hear anything, right? That was totally silent. Unlike Velcro, which would be rip, right? And this guy was my neighbor actually in Farmington several years ago. And so in his patent, he wrote his own patent application, wrote up this great like deer hunting story in it about how he did this Velcro thing. He saw this big buck, whoop, got away. Anyway, he calls this the bow hooker, and we were able to actually get him a patent on it. Okay, any idea what these are? Rock climbing chalks. So basically you put these in a crack and they engage in 3 points, and then you risk your life by hanging from it. And we had a case involving climbing chalks, and I think one of these was our client, the other one belonged to the guy that was suing us. He called his my client called his the wedgie. I remember writing this really fun letter saying, hey, do you have any of our wedgies? Because if you don't, my client would happily give you a wedgie at the next time we see you. And he's very good in the placement of wedgies. Anyway. So that's a very clever invention right there. You know, the patent office is known for not moving very quickly. It can take anywhere from 18 months to 5 years or longer to get a patent. It's not a quick issue. But the timing issue that I want you to learn today is you should file your patent application before you disclose your invention. So we get calls from clients, hey, we're going to a trade show next week, and we're disclosing our new whatever. And you're like, oh, are you kidding me? Because we need to file before you go to that trade show. Now, the U.S. has kind of a weird rule where you can actually have a 1-year grace period before you file, but doing that, you're jeopardizing all your foreign rights. So general rule, file in the U.S. before you disclose your invention. I mentioned Lifetime Products earlier on the shoot case. This is their first adjustable basketball system. When I was a law clerk at a law firm that was then called Workman, Natiger, and Jensen in the summer of '86, I was tasked with writing this patent application. This was the first patent application for Lifetime Products, and they just invented this product and eventually turned this into a $500 million a year company, pretty much because of the quality work I did on their patent application. But a lot of you, I'm sure, have these in your backyard. You use a little broomstick to adjust it up and down between 7 and 10 feet. Very cool device. This is a gap and mismatch measuring device. So imagine you're assembling cars and you want to know that gap between the doors, how that's fitting. This device actually shines 2 planes of light at that car door. They're coming down at opposite angles. And so the image on the door, if one's higher than the other, the image will seem higher than the other. Or, I mean, if they're mismatched, the image on one side will seem higher than the other. And then it can measure the gap, and it does a little vector algebra in the little computer. Very cool device. The inventor of this was like PhD physics type guy. Very fun to work with. Now, if you've ever been walking past the ping pong table and you scrape your thigh on the net, how obnoxious that is. This is the breakaway table tennis net assembly. Long needed in the art. Here's the bow hooker, and there it is in display, in case you were having trouble visualizing my explanation. This is a wheelchair for paraplegics. So the idea is, as you push on those handles, that's the power stroke, and then you pull back, it kind of ratchets back. And then you turn the handles laterally, and that's to steer. And then I think there's a handbrake on that left side, and then there's some shifter knobs on top. So this was invented by a mechanical engineer professor at BYU. And at the time, they were setting like all kinds of world speed records for wheelchairs. Very cool device. This is one of my favorite. This was the wife of a lawyer friend of mine. This was the Mrs. A's coupon organizer. Now, back in the day, everybody who's anyone had a Franklin day planner they would carry around, and their life was in that day planner. This was like pre-laptop tablets, right? And so what you could do is you could display, like, seriously, 20 coupons per page, put them in your Franklin day planner. When you went to the store, instead of dealing with like the accordion-style coupon organizers, which you may have seen are not very good, you had this really cool one. Everything would show at once. And they were selling these still up until a while ago, and I went to their website, and it's not up anymore. Okay, training wheels for the unicycle. I never did learn to ride a unicycle. This is apparently to facilitate bathroom reading. I don't know. I didn't do that one. Lawnmower, beer cover. So the interesting thing about this is not that it's a blouse, but that it was invented by Albert Einstein. I thought he was known for other things, but apparently he was into women's garments. Okay, patent infringement. So when you get a patent, at the end of the patent are the claims, and the claims tell you what the patent covers. And so basically a claim will say, okay, it's these three things in combination. You know, we're going to have a planar surface. We're going to have a support. We're going to have a plurality of legs. We're going to have a backrest. So it's these A, B, and C in combination. Now, if a competitor has what you claim, A, B, and C, even if they have more, they still infringe. But if a competitor eliminates one of the elements of your claim, they do not infringe. So if we claim a chair, a support, legs, and they somehow eliminate the legs, they don't infringe. So when you get your patent, you want to make sure that those claims are limited to the essential features of your invention. The patent is a right to exclude. It doesn't guarantee you the right to practice your own invention. It's the right to exclude. So let's say someone has a patent for a seat, support, and legs, and then I come along and I say, you know what, we really need a backrest. I'm going to get a patent on the combination of the backrest, the support, or the seat, the support, and the legs, and I get a patent. Well, my improvement is going to infringe the underlying patent for the seat, the support, and the legs. So some people say, well, I got a patent. I can practice my own invention. I said, no, you can't unless you avoid everyone else's patents. So sometimes improvement patents have their own challenges. Okay, copyrights. Copyright's a really fun area of the law. How are we doing for time? I'm going really fast. Okay. Copyrights cover anything that's fixed in a tangible medium of expression. So think oil paintings, books, anything you can sort of store. And the critical exemption to copyrights is it doesn't cover ideas. So we can say, hey, let's go to art class. I've got an idea. Let's have someone, a brunette, pose in front of the art class, and I want to copyright that idea. No, you can't do that. But as everyone paints that brunette, everyone's going to create their own copyrightable work based on that person. And it can be literary, it can be musical, it can be dramatic, it can be sculpture, it can be motion pictures, it can be architectural works, it can be computer software. It can be anything that's a creative expression of an idea, but not the idea itself. Okay, big issue in copyright is who owns the copyright. And this is where a lot of the litigation is in copyright law. So let's say you have a very successful business and you say, you know what, we need an app. Everyone has an app. We need an app. And so you hire your friend's teenage son to write an app for you. And he says, oh, that'd be great. I'll do that for $75,000. Oh, no problem. Here you go. And he writes the app. And after a couple of months, you're like, you know what? We want to sell this app, and we want to improve it. And in the meantime, this kid has disappeared to college. And so you start selling it. And the next thing you know, this kid sues you for infringement. He says, what? And he says, well, I didn't give you permission to do all those other things you're doing. And we say, what? We paid you $75,000. We own the app. He says, no. as a subcontractor, he still owns the copyright in the app. So when you hire someone to create something for you, you need to make sure your contract includes a transfer of the copyright. Now, if it's an employee that you have do it, then you automatically own it. But if it's non-employee, there's going to be an issue. Anybody recognize that? So, I finally binge watched season 1 and thoroughly enjoyed it. So there was, I guess it's, how many of you have seen Stranger Things on Netflix? Okay, most of you. There's a, quote, pop-up bar in Chicago that did this Stranger Things motif. And these are pictures of their bar. So outside they have this Hawkins National Labs, Benny's Burgers. They got some video going. Bikes. Here's their bar. One of their drinks got the waffle on it. And Netflix wrote them a cease and desist letter. And this is like a classic. This cease and desist letter went viral. Not many do. This one did. My walkie-talkie is busted, so I had to write this note instead, right? I heard you had launched a Stranger Things pop-up bar at your Logan Square location. Look, I don't want you to think I'm a total wasteoid, and I love how much you guys like the show, but I'm living upside down. I don't think we did a deal for you. And basically, I thought being really nice, saying, look, don't extend this. Contact us if you want to do this again. Very nice cease and desist letter. Anyone recognize this handbag? Louis Vuitton. So it turns out Louis Vuitton does not like people copying their stuff. They are very litigious. Does anyone recognize this handbag? Okay, this is basically a canvas, what would you call that thing? Tote. A canvas tote on which they have printed sort of a cartoon caricature of a Louis Vuitton handbag. And Louis Vuitton got very exercised when they saw this and sued these guys. And they said, hey, this is a parody. We are making fun of Louis Vuitton. We are not holding ourselves out as Louis Vuitton. No one's going to buy this thinking they're getting a real Louis Vuitton. And the district court agreed. Louis Vuitton appealed to, I think it was the Second Circuit back in New York. Second Circuit agreed. Louis Vuitton asked the Supreme Court of the United States to hear this case. They said no. So finally, our friends got away with selling these bags. Here's the Louis Vuitton. I can't remember what they call this one. This one's like very pricey. And here's the other bag version of it, which I thought was very fun. So enter the Penn Intellectual Property Group. So this is a student group at Penn State, University of Pennsylvania Law School. So they decide, let's have a conference on fashion law, and let's talk about this Louis Vuitton case. So they did this very clever poster, and you notice kind of the fake Louis Vuitton pattern there. It's not really the Louis Vuitton because it has like the C in the circle, and it has the TM for trademark, so the C in the circle is a copyright notice. And you are not going to believe it, but Louis Vuitton sent them a cease and desist letter for their stinking fashion law conference. And, you know, Dean Fitz, I am the director of civil enforcement for Louis Vuitton. I wish to express our concern over the unauthorized use of our trademark. And he goes on for like 3 pages. Well, so this guy learned the very difficult lesson that you do not send cease and desist letters to law schools because they're full of students that can do like free research and stuff. So the dean sends this letter back, and at the end he puts in this line. I couldn't figure out if he was like being really cordial, if this was just a total dig, but he's like, I encourage you to attend the symposium. It's like, you know, maybe you'll actually learn this area of the law for once. You know, if you're able to come, please let me know so I can introduce myself. Anyway, I thought that was very hilarious. Okay, Ed Sheeran. If you got here early, you heard me playing a song. Matt Cardle wrote a song that I'm going to play a little bit for you, and called Amazing. A few years later, Ed Sheeran wrote his song. I'm going to let you compare the two. This is Matt Cardle. What do you think? Did Ed copy that or not? Yeah. So not Matt Cardle, but the songwriter that did that song for him, the songwriters, there are two of them, actually sued for $20 million. And the case was settled, and as the case with all these settlements, they're for an undisclosed amount, right? I'm sure they did not want that one to go to the jury, because it seemed to me something was pretty obvious there. And who knows what happened, but that would not have looked good. Okay, trade secrets. This is the last area of intellectual property, and it's very simple, and the concept is this. If you have something that can be kept as a secret that gives you a competitive advantage, then you can have rights to that. And you'll have your employees sign a contract saying, you know what, we have a bunch of secrets at this company, and they're going to be identified as confidential, and you're not allowed to disclose those. You know, maybe we're Coca-Cola, and the magic formula to Diet Coke is going to be disclosed to you as one of the formulators, and you cannot disclose that outside the company, et cetera, et cetera. But the key is you've got to keep it secret. Now, this gets us to the cookies. So the story is told, and this is probably, this is probably apocryphal, but the story is that lady goes to Neiman Marcus, which is a very high-end store where you can buy Mont Blanc pens and Gucci jeans. And she goes to the bakery and buys some cookies. She's like, wow, these cookies are great. Can I have the recipe? And they said, well, we're going to have to charge you. It's $3.95. She's like, okay, here's my Neiman Marcus charge card. Just put it on that. And a few weeks later, her bill comes, and they charged her $395 for the recipe. So she's infuriated. This story kind of goes viral. It gets written up in Time magazine. And at the end of the article, they say, for what it's worth, here's the recipe. Okay, so now everybody's got the recipe. So the point is, if you've got a trade secret, you've got to keep it secret. So I have for you guys a cookie made from the Neiman Marcus chocolate chip recipe and a copy of the recipe. Yeah, so what you need to do is get a license from the people that have now, patents don't last forever. They do expire. So most of the stuff you see around probably had a patent on it at one point in time, but now it's expired. So if you're going to actually improve on something that has a current patent on it, then you need to get a license from anyone who owns the underlying patents before you can sell that. But you can still patent it, and then maybe offer your patent for license to those that are in that business in case they want to make the device with your improvement on it. Well, it was a weird thing. I got to law school, and one day I realized, hey, I have the credentials to do patent law. I have an engineering degree. Maybe I should look into that. And I did, and it was a good fit, and it's been a great career. No, unless you're a drug company. Somehow drug companies, they throw enough money at Congress, they get like special legislation to extend their patents. But for average people, you know, it's 20 years from the filing date, and then once those 20 years are up, you're done. It's dedicated to the public. So when we do right-to-use studies for people, we'll often look for, try to find their invention or their product in an old patent and say, okay, yeah, you're good to go because this has already been patented and expired unless there's some change to it. Well, hopefully the patent examiner would find the old patent and cite it against you and show that what you've, quote, invented is not new. So, yeah. So that wouldn't work. So come up and have a cookie. Thanks for your time today.